And for those of you who have logged on either through YouTube or through you're a congregant, you received the email from the congregation. Shabbat Shalom, good morning, good morning. We are live on a Saturday morning, on a Shabbat morning from Longwood, Florida. And we will start our service as we start every morning service in our Siddur on page 146. You may rise if you are able. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasek v'vina lavchin bein yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzelmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mavish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokev kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher echin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvuraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifaraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten layayev koach. If you're standing, you may be seated as we continue at the top of page 148. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam We're in the middle of page 148. Uneinu hayom v'chol yom lecheinu lechesed u'lerachamim be'einecho u'v'neicho ro'enu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai Gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. We continue in the middle of 148 in the Hebrew or the English on 149. Continuing in the middle of page 150. Ashreinu matov chalkeinu amana'im goraleinu mayafa yerushatenu. Ashreinu shanachnu mashkimim ma'arivim erev avoker ve'omrim pa'amayim b'chol yom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. Kadesh et shemcha al makdishei shemecha, v'kadesh et shemcha be'olamecha, u'vishuatcha tarim v'tabir karnenu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh et shemcha b'harabim. Our service continues on page 168 in Siddur Chadash for the Psalm for Shabbat, Psalm 92. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh, Shabu Hayu Levim Omrim Beveit HaMikdash. Two lines up from the bottom of page 168. Od yenum v'seva d'shenim v'ranim hiyu, le'agid ki yashar Adonai, Our service continues on page 174 with Psalm 30. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Two lines up from the bottom of 174. Hafachtem mizbedei lamacholi, patachti sakivet azveni simcha, l'man yezbachal kavod v'lo yidom, Adonai Elohai li'olam odeka. We turn in our Siddur now to page 180 for Psuki de Zimra, Baruch She'amar. Please rise if you are able. Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch ozer u'mekayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov lire'ahav, Baruch alad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch Podehu Matzil, Baruch Shemohu, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Ha'ela Avarachaman Mechola B'fi Amohu, Mishubach Ufor Bishlon Chasidav V'Avadav, Ushirei David Avdecha, Nehalech Adonai Eloheinu Bishvachonu Bizmirohut, Nekadelcha V'nishbecha Nfarcha, ונזכיר שמך ונמליכך על מלכנו אלוהינו, יחיד חיי העולמים, מלך משובח ומפואר עדי עד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מעולם בתשבחות. If you're standing, you may be seated. As we turn to page 190 in our Siddur Chadash, for Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei Veitecha, Od Yalucha Stella. Two lines up from the bottom of page 190. Tehillah Adonai yadaber pi vivarech habasar shem kadshal elam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah. Turning the page in our Siddur to page Psalm 146 on page 192. Hallelujah, hallelujah, nafshi Adonai. Adonai shomer gerim yatom yamayodeit v'derech hashini aveit yimloch Adonai le'olam melech ha'etzion lidor v'ador. Hallelujah. We turn to page 194 for Psalm 150, the final psalm in our preliminary service for Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 b'kodsho, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'chiyahuzo, hallelujah, 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 b'gvurotav, hallelujah, hallelujah, kerov gudlo, Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, beneva v'chinor. Hallelujah, 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 betofu machor. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 b'tzir tzlei shamaha. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tzir tzlei truah. Kol haneshama techalel yah. Hallelujah. Kol haneshama techalel yah. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'amen. Baruch Adonai mitzion shochin Yerushalayim. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael oseh niflo levado. Uvaruch shem kavado le'olam v'yelem alei kavado kol haaretz. Amen v'amen. We turn forward in our Siddur to page 214. And while you are turning forward to page 214, I am going to take a moment and bestow a gift upon the Religious Activities Vice President of the Congregation, Beth Am, who, if you have not met Osvaldo yet, Osvaldo, please come forward. Please come forward.
Why?
Because I'm just asking.
Let me warn you. He wants his attorney.
I am giving him my luach. I don't know if he has a luach. This is mine. This is so you can prepare for every service for the rest of the year up to Rosh Hashanah. If you've never seen the luach before, it details every Torah reading, every special prayer for every Shabbat, even the way you walk around the Torah if you're processing with the Torah. So for you, so you can best prepare for the upcoming year, I believe the rabbi has one and you have one. So that's the only people that need one.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
That is a real gift. I am amazed, Mark. Yeah. It is the Bible.
It is.
It is Mark's Bible.
It is. It tells me what's... Now, I don't know anything that's going on anymore. I am a tabula rasa. I am a blank slate. It's fascinating. There's lots of little commentaries in it, too. Really, seriously. Anyway, we turn to page 214 for Nishmat Kol Chai. Nishmat Kol Chai, tevarech et shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu. We'll read in unison, starting in the English in the middle of page 215. If our mouths were filled with song as water fills the sea, and our tongues rang with your praise as tirelessly as the roaring waves, if our lips offered adoration as boundless as the sky, and our eyes shone in reverence as brightly as the sun, if our hands were spread in prayer as wide as eagle's wings, and our feet ran to serve you as swiftly as the deer, we would still be unable to thank you adequately for the smallest fraction of the numberless bounties you have bestowed upon our ancestors and upon us. We continue at the top of page 216, 217. We continue 5 lines up from the bottom of page 216. Nehalecha aneshabecha nefaracha v'nevarech et shem kadshecha kamor leDavid barchi nafshi Adonai v'chol karavei et shem kadshohu ha'el b'ta'atzumot uzecha hagadol b'fkot shemecha hagibor lanetzach v'yan l'olam enorotecha hamelech ha'yoshev al kisei ram v'nistacha. Turning to page 218. Shochen ad maharom v'kadosh shemo v'katuv rananu tzadikim b'Adonai la'yesharim lavatechila b'fi yisharim titalahal u'divrei tzadikim titbarach ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקלות רביבון ומחול בית ישראל. ברינה יתפאר שבך מלכנו בכל דור ודור, שכן כל לבד כל היצורים, לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפורר, לרומם, לידל, לברך, להלל, קלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך. Please rise. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול הקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שירוש בך הלב וזמרה, עוז וממשלה נצח גדולה גבורה, תלה ותפארת קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודעות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדוני נפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלפי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברך חירותי וימלך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה וזמן קריב אמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלוש מקודשה. ברכו לאלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן. We turn to page 224 for the formal call to prayer for our Shacharit service this Shabbat morning. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam yotzer or uvarei choshech osei shalom uvarei et ha'chol. If you're standing, you may be seated as we turn to page 2, as our service continues on the top of page 226. Four lines up from the bottom of page 226. En kechech Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, v'yein zoladecha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba, eves biltecha go aleinu limot hamashiach, v'yein d'melecha moshienu l'tchiyat hametim. El Adon ha'kol ha'ma'asim, baruch u'mvarach b'fi kol neshama, Gadlo v'tuvo male olam dat udvina zov v'imoto. Hamid gael el chayot hakodesh v'neder b'chavor al hamirkava zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavodo tovim miorot shebara Eloheinu yitzoram b'dat v'vina uvaskel koach u'gvura natan bahem Leod moshlim bekerev tevel, leim ziv umfikim noga, na eziva bechol haolam, semechim betzesam besasim bevoam, osim be'ema retzon konam, per vechavod nonim lishmo, tzol averina lezecher malchuto, kara l'shemesh vayizrach or, rat vehitkin surat havana, שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מהרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ויופנים וחיות הקודש. Turning to the top of page 230 in our Siddur. לאל אשר שבת בכל המעשים. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך, V'al me'orei orshi asidi yefarucha Selah. Our service continues because this is Shabbat and on a weekday on the top of page 234. Kulam avim, kulam birumim, kulam gevorim, v'kulam osim b'mavir haaretzon kohonam, v'kulam porchim epikim v'ktushav Torah, uv'shira v'zimra, u'varachim u'shabachim farim u'maritzim u'makdishim u'mamlichim, et shem ha'el ha'melech, ha'gadol ha'gibor v'hanora kadosh hu, v'kulam mekablim aleihem al malchut shamayim zeh mizeh, ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה וברבנים הקדושה כולם כחרונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך על הארץ כבודו ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת צרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים Baruch Yevon Adonai Mimkomo Le'el Baruch Nimod Yitenu. We're at the top of page 236 in our Siddur. O Chadash Tzion Ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu me'ora le'oro Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer ha'me'orot. Turning to page 238. Ava Rabbah Haftanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla gedola v'tera Chamat aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Ba'avor avotenu Shebatchu v'cha Avinu Malkeinu, v'telemdechu kechaim, kein techanenu tlamdenu, Avinu ha'avarachaman, amrachem rachem aleinu, v'tein b'leibenu lehavinu laskir lishmoa, lilmod u'lelamed, lishmor v'lasot, u'lkayem et kol divrei, Talmud Toratecha be'ava, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ויראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, Nagila v'nizmecha, Nagila v'nizmecha, Yeshuatecha. We now turn to the top of page 240. Those of us wearing a talit, at this point in the service we gather the tzitziot on the four corners of our talit as we chant V'havienu preceding Shema V'ahavta using the tune from the national anthem of Israel, Hatikva. V'havienu leshalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyut komemir le'artzenu ki poel yeshuadata uvanu v'charta mikolam v'lashon v'keravtanu l'shimcha hagadol sela sela be'emet l'hoda lecha lo yachedcha b'yahava Baruch atah Adonai Habacher b'yamo Yisrael b'yahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha V'hayu advarim ha'ele Asher Anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ולכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם במזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. The second part of the V'ahavta will be recited silently on page 244 and 245. We will chant the third part on page 246 in unison using Torah trope when we get there. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו לכם ציצית על כנפי ביתיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית על כנף בתיר תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו זכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We're at the top of page 248. לדור ודור יקמו שמו קיים וחיסונך ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. אמת שאדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכינו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצאנו צור ישועתנו פודינו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך. If you're still holding your tzitziot, you may release them as we turn to the top of page 250 where our service continues with Ezrat Avotenu. Ezrat Avotenu atohu me'olam. Three lines up from the bottom of page 250. Ram v'nisa gadol v'nohora mashpil gei magbiya shefalim motzi asirim ufode anavim v'yozeh dalim v'yon eliamo b'yet shava elav tehilot le'el elyon baruch hu u'mevorach Moshe u'bnei Yisrael לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות עושה פלא שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך שפת חיים יחד כולם הודו וימלכו ויאמרו Adonai Yimloch le'olam v'ha'ed. We rise for Tzor Yisrael. Tzor Yisrael, Kuma v'ezal Yisrael, u'v'dechinu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzevaot shemo, kedosh Yisrael. Baruch ata Adonai, Gad Yisrael. The Shacharit Amida for Shabbat can be found in our Siddur on page 255, continuing to page 256 for Kedusha. We will recite those two pages in unison. If you are at home, please find east and rise and face in that direction. Those of us in the sanctuary, we already know east is yonder. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך חוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך מימין ומחיה ומצביע ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב היה נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו אז בקורש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מנסים למצרפים ליומתם ברוך יומנו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקום חמקנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים ערך לדור ודור לדור ודור ולנצח נצח נצחים וייננו תירנה מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי וזכר הידי דוד דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד גדלך ולנצח נצחים קדושך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו בינו ימוש לעולם ועד כי מלכותך וקדושתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. The Amida continues through pages 266 and 267, after which you may be seated. This is an appropriate time for any personal prayers or meditations. And as is the custom of Congregation Beth Am, please, there's no need to rush. If you have not yet finished your personal prayers and meditations, please do not feel you need to rush. The congregation continues with Kaddish Shalem on page 268 and on multiple places throughout our Siddur. Yitkerav Yitkera Shemei Rabbah, V'yalmad Divrach Yurutei, V'yamlik Malkutei, V'chayechonu V'yamechonu, V'chayechol Beit Yisrael, B'agalav Izman Kari V'yimeru, Yesh Merabah Mevorach, Li'olam Olam Me'olam Maya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbar, Yitterman, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalash Medikudisha, B'richu Le'ila, Minko B'rchata, V'shirata, Tibshachata V'nechamata, Damiram B'yalma V'yimeru, Amen. Titkabat, Tonu V'adahon, D'chol Yisrael, Kodom V'hon, Didishmaya V'yimeru, Yehi Shalom Rabba, Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yimeru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav, V'yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yal Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'yimeru, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, everyone. Live and virtually alive. I don't know if that's the correct expression, virtually alive. You could probably call somebody on life support, virtually alive. No, that's terrible. You can tell it's been a long time since I've been up here. It's like free thinking. All right, so as I was discussing with congregants before the service, this is Parshat Truma, exceedingly important. And no laughing, we'll get there. And I didn't know whether to do some research. Well, I did research on Parshat Truma. And of course, I always default where Dr. Ullman defaults, which is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs and everybody else. But then I was really torn by what's going on in the news this week about the question of whether Judaism is a race. Now, we learned a long, long time ago at Congregation Beth Am that a study of Torah doesn't necessarily mean it has to be from that parsha of the week. Everything is Torah. So I didn't know whether we wanted to delve into that or not. I realize that's touchy. So we probably won't. But it is a question that we were talking about before services. Is Judaism a race? I mean, there are black Jews, yellow Jews, brown Jews, Jews that speak all different types of languages in addition to Ivrit. Is it a race or is it a religion? Is it a race or is it a faith? But it's in the news.
Why can't it be both?
Well, I'm not. Well, a question was asked, why can't it be both? I'm not saying it can't. Believe me, I am not the arbiter of good judgment here. Do not take what I have to say as gospel truth. You'll be making a huge mistake. But it has bothered me because I think it should bother all of us. It's a big question now. I mean, my Facebook is loaded with commentary from Jewish sources like the Forward magazine about yes and no, and the consensus is basically yes, it is a race, believe it or not, what I've been reading most of. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I leave it up to you to decide. But we can get back there because we have lots of time. So, Parshat Truma. The Torah, and I abbreviate Rabbi Sachs, for those of you who've read him already this morning. The Torah describes two acts of creation. God's creation of the universe, and the Israelites' creation of the Mishkan, the sanctuary that traveled with them in the desert, the prototype of the temple in Jerusalem. The connection between them is not incidental. As a number of commentators have noted, the Torah invokes a series of verbal parallels between them. The effect is unmistakable. The latter mirrors the former. As God made the universe, so he instructed the Israelites to make the Mishkan. It is their first great constructive and collaborative act after crossing the Red Sea, leaving the domain of Egypt and entering the new domain as the people of God. Just as the universe began with an act of creation, so Jewish history begins with an act of creation. The key words used in both sections of the Torah, Genesis, Bereshit for creation, and now Shemot for the Mishkan, uses words like make, see, complete, bless, sanctify, work, behold. Same in both narratives. The effect is to suggest that making the Mishkan was, for the Israelites, what creating the universe was for God. Yet the disparity is extraordinary. The creation of the universe takes a mere 34 verses from the book of Bereshit. The making of the Mishkan takes hundreds of verses. It covers Parsha Truma, Tetzaveh, parts of Ki Tisa, Vayakel, and Peduke. Considerably more than 10 times as long. Why? The universe is vast. The sanctuary was small. A modest construction of poles and drapes that could be dismantled and carried from place to place as the Israelites journeyed through the wilderness. Given that the length of any passage in the Torah is a guide to the significance it attaches to an episode or law, why devote so much time and space to the tabernacle? I've often wondered that myself. Why? Because it goes on and on and on. The answer is profound, which I am not. The Torah is not man's book of God. It is God's book of mankind. It is not difficult for an infinite, omnipotent creator to make a home for humanity. What is difficult is for human beings, in their finitude and vulnerability, to make a home for God. Yet that is the purpose, not only of the Mishkan in particular, but of the Torah as a whole. The tabernacle, small and fragile though it was an event of cosmic significance. And anybody who watched Raiders of the Lost Ark know how cosmically significant it really was. That is not written in here. Rabbi Sachs did not say that. It brought the divine presence from heaven to earth. How, though, are we to understand this idea? It is contained in one of the key words of the Torah, namely kadosh, which we read all morning, which translates to holy. As Jewish mystics noted, creation involves an act of self-limitation on the part of the Creator. The word olam, universe, is directly related to the word the ilam, meaning hidden. For there to be the possibility of a being with free will, choice, and moral responsibility, God cannot be a ubiquitously tangible presence. When the Israelites heard the voice of God at Sinai, they said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." The direct, unmediated presence of God is overwhelming. The infinite crowds out the finite. God is like a parent, and unless a parent lets go, the child will never learn to walk. Letting go means that the child will stumble and fall, but not forever. Eventually, it will learn to walk. So it is with other forms of learning by doing. At various stages, a parent must progressively withdraw to leave space for the child to grow. So too God must withdraw if humanity, made in his image, is eventually to become his partner in the work of creation. Creation is an act of divine self-limitation. This, however, according to Rabbi Katz, creates a paradox. If God is perceptible everywhere, there is no room for mankind. But if God is perceptible nowhere, how can humanity know him, reach him, or understand what he wants from us? The answer, already hidden at the account of creation itself, is that God reserves in several dimensions a domain that is peculiarly his. The first is in time, the seventh day. The second was among the nations after the division into multiple languages and civilizations, the covenantal people, the children of Israel. The third was in space, the tabernacle. Each of these is holy, meaning a point at which the divine presence emerges from hiddenness to exposure, from concealment to revelation. As Shabbat is to time, so the tabernacle was to space. Kadosh, holy, set apart, God's domain. The holy is the metaphysical area where heaven and earth meet. That meeting has specific parameters. It is where God rules, not mankind. Therefore, it is associated with the renunciation of the autonomous human will. There is no room for private initiative on the part of mankind. That is why later we will read Nadav and Abihu die, because they bring a fire offering that was not commanded. Just as the secular is where God practices self-limitation to create space for mankind, so Kodesh, holiness, is where human beings engage in self-limitation to create a space for God. That is why the creation of the tabernacle by the Israelites is the counterpart of the creation of the universe by God. Both were acts of self-renunciation, whereby the one made space for the other. The elaborate detail with which the Torah describes the making of the Mishkan is to show that none of it was done at the initiative of Moses, or Bezalel, or the Israelites themselves. Hence the lack of parallelism at one crucial point. Whereas after the creation of the universe we read, and I quote, "And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good." After the making of the Mishkan, we read, and I quote, "Moses saw all the skilled work, and behold, they had done it, as God commanded it. They had done it." When it comes to the holy, as God commanded it, is the human equivalent. When it comes to the holy, as God commanded it, the human is the human equivalent of the divine. It was very good. Chol is the space God makes for man. Kodesh is the space we make for God. And that's Rabbi Sachs's commentary on Terumah. And as you can expect, as we continue to read the remaining parshiot going on and on, we will continue to read more and more about the details of the making of the Mishkan. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Much more profound than I would ever be in 1,000 Shabbatot. It truly is amazing how some people... Yeah, who plays chess?
Toby has a question.
Who plays chess? Toby has a... Well, you'll have to ask Rabbi Sachs, a blessed memory. Yes, Toby.
What's that word you use, chol?
Chol.
What's that mean?
Chol. I think Rabbi Sachs defined it here, and I will quote him, meaning Chol. C-H-O-L. It's a chet, most likely. Chol. He just defines the space God makes for man. Didn't he define it as the universe? All, yes. The secular. He defined it as the secular. That which is not Kodesh is Chol. Kodesh is holy. Chol is all. Everything else that is not holy. Thank you. It was right here in front of me. Who plays chess? I was never a good chess player because you have to think so many steps ahead. I don't think really that way. And that's the reason these commentaries always amaze me, because the steps that some of these commentators take to get from point A to point B is really quite fascinating, and I sometimes wonder, how did they get there? You know, I've told this story before. You know, I may ask you to daven Musaf service. Yeah, you. Because you did a really incredible job online. Was it last Shabbat? 2 Shabbatot ago? I told you about it. I spoke to him about it. Beautiful voice. Loved the Ladino. And this by no means is my bima. So keep that in mind in the next few minutes. Where was I going with this? Yes, the convoluted commentaries. I remember teaching, and I've said this to a number of people before over the years, so some of you may have already heard this story. I was teaching at the Hebrew high school a number of years ago, ethics. And one of the topics concerned in vitro fertilization. Okay? Is it acceptable in Judaism? because usually the donor and the recipient are kept anonymous. Okay? So, if you consult a conservative Jew, or a Reformed Jew, probably Reconstructionists as well, the commentary is generally yes. Anything that can make life is acceptable. So if there's a couple that requires in vitro fertilization to have a child, if it creates another Jewish life, any life, it's acceptable. I found an Orthodox source which says it isn't. That's what I said. But here was the logic, and I found the logic as flawed. I don't know if it's flawed, I found it incredible. Remember I said that the donor and the recipient are anonymous. If by some peculiar chance they were siblings, the child born would be the result of an incestuous relationship. Therefore, not acceptable. And I thought to myself, wow, somebody thought that far out, that what if the donor and the recipient were blood relatives, God forbid, brother? Who would have thought that? I surely would have never thought that. But some rabbi did. And I thought, that's brilliant. He must be an incredible chess player. I will never play chess against that person, as I will do. I'll probably even play checkers against them. I'd probably lose in badminton or table tennis too. But I can tell by the blank looks on all of your faces, I'm going to say it's blank because it's obscured by a mask, that you didn't find that nearly as interesting as I did. In any instance.
Actually, it was probably a lawyer who thought of it.
Dan says, it's probably a lawyer who thought about that. Pardon? If you could make sure they were not blood relatives, but like I said, standard process is it's anonymous. That's part of the whole process, maintaining anonymity. I thought it was just a fascinating thought process that got to there. Entirely possible, albeit remote. In any instance, that's Parshat Terumah. We will continue with the rest of the Mishkan as we continue to read in the book of Shemot. I think I've discussed everything I need to discuss this Shabbat morning. I'm pretty sure I did. Comments, suggestions, something you want to add to the Mishkan? An anecdotal story of the Mishkan I probably learned about 150 years ago. If you study the Mishkan, what did the exterior look like? It was covered with a really rough skin. The exterior was terrible. It was not very bad. It was not aesthetically appealing. What was the inside like? Magnificent. Adorned with gold and fine fabrics. What's the lesson to be learned? Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge something by its exterior. A very fifth grade explanation as to a lesson to be learned from the Mishkan, but a decent lesson nonetheless. Never judge a book by its cover. In any instance, we have come to the part of the service where we will chant Musaf. And if he would, be so kind, I will put on a mask. By the way, those of you in virtual land who think we are not wearing masks, I am not wearing a mask right now, but I am quite distant from everybody here. I will put a mask on as I leave the bima, and I invite Osvaldo, the Vice President for Religious Activities at Congregation Beth Am, to daven Musaf service. Do you want to hold the mic, or do you want the mic in a stand? I do. It's on my phone. I will pop up, and I will bring it to you when you need it. Is that okay? Can we do that? You know what? We will do that right now. Boy, he is smarter than me. That's why he's... Pardon?
Should we do the Mishabara?
We are going to do it right now. That is brilliant. Yeah, we would normally do it between the Torah and the Haftarah anyway. We turn to the inside back cover of your Siddur, where we will recite a Misha Barak for those who are ill at home or in the hospital. In between the first and second paragraphs, you are invited to stand, raise your hand, and make any kind of sign or symbol you want so I can recognize you, so you can recite names on your personal Misha Barak list. Those at home, please take the opportunity to do so. Misha Barak Avotenu, Mikor HaBracha Halimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. On the congregation Beth Am Misha Barak list are the following: Shelley Ackman, Steve Ashheim, Mona Bakov, Mildred Baumstein, Teresa Kala, Amelia Cooley, Audrey Dash and Bruce Dash, Gordon Feinberg, Miriam Feingold, Bunny Graham, John Higgins, Donald Ingram, Alan Jacobs, Rita Kindle, Norman Levin, Steve Lifshin, Sandy Minkin, Dom Salfi, Loretta Schur, Harleen Shrike, Leslie Schulsinger, Izzy Sigmund, Saul Stein, Bill Thompson, Peter Teitelbaum, Nancy Town and Herb Weissman, Katharina Williams, Label Ben Margalit, Liba Shlomit, Rachel Bat Margalit, Feivel Shlomo Ben Dvorah, Yisrael Ben Ethan, Avram Ben Masha. If you have personal names you'd like to add, please rise or raise your hand, starting from the back. Jeff. Greg.
Sawyer Bartell and Jenna Bartell.
Morris.
Means Shrek, not Shrek.
Shrek? Shrek, as in the animated character. Okay. Tuvia.
Tom Rapsadar and Eric Lindstrom.
Osvaldo. Anyone who I've missed?
Robert Meyer, Keith Langston.
Those at home, please feel free to speak a name on your own personal Misha Barak list as we conclude with the second paragraph. Misha Barak imotenu, Mekor HaBracha Halavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Our Musaf service, led by Osvaldo, will begin with Kaddish. We'll begin with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 354 in our Siddur. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, this was my first service. So live. So please rise, page 354. Ikada veikada shemer rabba. Biad ma divra chilutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei lechol bet Yisrael bagala bagala u'bizman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yehei shemer rabba mevorach yalam na me'almaya yitbara v'yishtabach ויתרומן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה בעלמה ואמרו. Turn to page 357. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei Avoteinu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel v'Elokei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Anora, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovin, v'Koneh HaKol, v'Zocher Chazdei Avot, ומבין גוי בניהם למען שמו באחווה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Srat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם, אדוני מחיה מתים, אתה רב להושיע, מושיע הרוח ומושיע הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לישני עפר עמוך בגבורות ומידו מלך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיע ישועה ונעמד לחיים מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחייך המתים נריצך ונקדישך כוסתיך שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך קודש ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זלזל ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו כבודו מלך עולם מלשתה שואלים סלע זה איה מקום כבודו למנתם מאירו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו הוא יפרע ברחמים והיום הים חדים שמו ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני דברי קדושך ככתוב לאמור ימלוא אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושמך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי יהיה מלך גדול קדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש continue on page 372, Kaddish Shalem. יגדל ביקדש שמי רבה, ילמד דברי חילותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב וימנו. יהי שמי רבה מברך, יעלם לעלמי עלמיה, יתברא וישתבח ויתפעל ויתרומן, יתנשא ויתהדל ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקדושיו. אלא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בעלמה ואמרו. תתכבד צלוחון ובחון דכל ישראל, קודמה ובחון ושמיה ואמרו. יש רמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו. עושה שלום בברומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו. אמן. Apologize, I don't have my glasses and it's a little bit hard here. So we continue with En Keloheinu, and then so according with Mark, we're going to do in Ladino again, so let's do it. En Keloheinu, En Kemalkeinu, En que Malkeinu, en que Moshienu, non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mi Eloheinu, mi Adoneinu, mi Malkeinu, mi Moshienu, quien como nuestro Dios, quien como nuestro Señor, quien como nuestro Rey, quien como nuestro Salvador. No del Eloheinu, no del Adoneinu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Lo haremos a nuestro Dios, lo haremos a nuestro Señor, lo haremos a nuestro Rey, lo haremos a nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Bendito nuestro Dios, bendito nuestro Señor, bendito nuestro Rey, bendito nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Tú sos nuestro Dios, tú sos nuestro Señor, tú sos nuestro Rey, tú sos nuestro Salvador. Laila, 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 laila.
Worth the price of admission.
Yeah, it's because I don't have my notes. So last time I have all my notes, so but it's okay. So we're gonna stand up again on page 402. Aleinu. Turn your ease. Aleinu eshabe alado hakol lategedu laleyotzei bereshit shelo azanu yorei haratzon velo samanush kemishpechot ha'adama. שלא זמלכנו ככן בגורלנו כחוד המונן ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסף הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים עמה ושינה סוסו וגוי ברומיים הוא אלוהינו אין אימות מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו ידעת היום וישרבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים עמה ועל הארץ מתחת בתורתך אדוני ימלוא לעולם ועד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו אחד. May be seated. You have this. Our side. Just one name. We'll do our morning. So this morning we remember Florence Goldfarb,
Yes.
mother of Marcia Rosen. Somebody else? So we turn to page to recite the Kaddish, morning Kaddish, on page 110. We write together, Yikada v'kadash merava, v'alma divra chiltei, v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei v'chol bet Yisrael, bagala v'izman kariv v'imelu, amen. Yehi shemer rava mevorach li'olam na'ameh almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yit'oman v'yitnaseh, v'yit'ada v'yithalal shemei d'kedusha v'richu. לעילם ינקול ברכתה ושירתה, קדוש בחתה ונחמתה, דאמירם ויעלמה ואמרום, אמן. יהי שלום הרב אמין שמיה, וחיים עלינו ויעקול ישראל ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ויעקול ישראל ואמרו, amen. I think now is the time for the announcement for President Tom Mayer.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome everyone here in person and to those live streaming at home. Thank you very much, Osvaldo, for leading us in Musaf. And Mark, always thank you for leading us in service and your wonderful Devar Torah.
Thank you for leaving.
Tomorrow afternoon, Sunday, here at the church, we will be handing out home test kits for COVID from 2 p.m. to 3:30. So if you need test kits, please come by. It'll be taking place in the parking lot. This coming Thursday evening, we'll have the first meeting of the membership committee. It will be Thursday evening at 7:30. It will be done on Zoom. So all people are welcome. All members are welcome. So more information will come out with the Zoom codes coming up this week. Next Friday and Saturday, Shabbat services will be in person again here, and Rabbi Barnett will be back leading services. So please tend to attend. Also, exciting, the Super Bowl squares, we have filled the board. The board is full. This coming Sunday is Super Bowl, a week from tomorrow is Super Bowl Sunday. We will be having a Super Bowl party at the home of Lisa and Eric Albert. Please plan to enjoy. You will need to RSVP. They always are gracious hosts when they have events at their house. It will be fun and exciting for everybody. And then mark your calendars. On March 4th, we'll be having our next Havarah. It'll be at the home of Lois Smith. Please keep that in mind. Havarahs are always exciting and a lot of fun for us here at Congregation Beth Am. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Turn our Siddur page 412 for Adon Olam to end our service. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Veterin Kol, Yesid Nivra, Let Nasa, Vechet Sokol. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, והרי יתלות הכל, לבדו ימלוך נורא אדון עולם, והוא היה, והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארת אדון עולם, אדון עולם, אשר מלך, בטרם כל יסוד נברא, לעת נשא וחצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו להגבירה אדון עולם, בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא ההווה המזרע אדון עולם, אדון עולם, אדון עולם, אשר מלך, וטרם כל יסיב נברא, לעת נשא וחצו כל. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, והוא אלי והגואלי, וסורכב לי בצרה אדון עולם, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנקוסי ביום אקרא אדון עולם, אדון עולם אשר מלך, וטרם כל יסיב נברא, לעת נשא וחצו כל. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, וידו אף כי רוחי, ואת אישם ויעירה אדון עולם, והוא רוחי גבייתי, אדוני לי ולא ידע אדון עולם. שבת שלום.